Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So recently I found an old DVD stand thrown out by the side of the road and I thought I've got loads of DVDs, I'll take it home, see what I can do with it, see if I can sort of fix it up, modernise it and then put it back into use. And here it is. So in this video I'll be showing you how I restored this DVD stand. So recently I found this thrown out on the side of the road. It's a DVD rack for storing DVDs. As you can see, it's covered in dust, it's quite rough looking. So what I'm going to do is replace all of that wood black material. It's some kind of thin chipboard with a veneer on it or a vinyl coating, and I'm probably going to spray the metal rack to make it look a bit more modern. I'm going to be replacing that black part with some pine, some thicker pine, so hopefully it should look more modern. So to do this project I'm going to be using some reclaimed pine, old bits of furniture that I found on the side of the road, and I've got a couple of pieces here about 20mm thick, nice chunky pieces. First I needed to take the stand apart. I removed the rack and I'll be spraying that up later on. And then I could take apart the three pieces that make up the stand. And these were just made out of some thin chipboard with a plasticky vinyl on. Then I could take some measurements because I want to use this as a template to remake it. And I decided to make the whole thing a little bit bigger in all dimensions. Then I could set up the fence on the table saw and rip a clean edge because this piece has rounded edges and I want them to be nice and square. And then I could rip it down to its final width. Here I'm using the original piece as a template, marking up, ready to make the cuts, and I cut this out again with the table saw. So now to make the top and bottom pieces, and I'm using this thick piece of pine which came off some kind of chest of drawers. Again I'm just cutting some clean edges and then I can cut it down widthwise, and then after that I'll cut two separate pieces out of this one piece. This wood has holes in it because it was furniture, so I'm just trying to avoid all of those holes, and I managed to get two nice pieces. So as I said earlier, I want the whole thing to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to use the original piece as a template, but I'm also going to use this piece of electrical cable to make the whole thing about a centimetre bigger in all dimensions, and I'm tracing around that with a pen. Then with the jigsaw I could roughly cut out these shapes. And then onto the disc sander, where I could refine the shape right up to the line that I made. And with the disc sander I could get a nice smooth rounded edge. Once the first piece was done, I could use that as a template for the second piece and repeat the process. And then I had two nice rounded pieces. So now I want to transfer over the holes that hold the rack in place, the metal rack. So I'm drilling down through the original pieces straight
into the pine. Once I'd made a mark that way, I could use a piece of tape for the depth and then drill my way down to that mark. And these holes are drilled the same diameter as the metal. Now I need to mark up ready to drill some more holes. So I'm using the combination square to help me there. I'm going to use 2 screws, top and bottom, and I'm going to be covering them with dowels. I think the screws will provide more strength and keep everything nice and tight. So then I used an awl to mark up for the holes, the pilot holes. Now over to the drill press. So I'm starting off with the larger holes, which are to accommodate the dowels. And I've got a depth gauge set here. I'm going about 1 centimetre deep. And then with the point of those holes, I can use that as a guide to then drill down for the pilot hole, ready to add the screw later on. Now I want to spray paint this metal rack, and it's got like a coat of silvery paint on it. So I'm using some wire wool to give the paint a key and rough it all up. And the bits I couldn't reach, I used a wire brush. I have this 2-in-1 paint and primer. It's a black gloss. And I gave the whole thing 2 coats back to front. Now I want to add a round over. I've got a round over bit in the router, and I'm going to add the round over to the top and bottom of both pieces. This should prevent chips, and I think it looks nice too. Then on to sanding. I've got an 80 grit paper in the sander, and I just took my time to make sure everything was nice and smooth and all the finish was removed. And then I finished off with a hand sanding. I didn't go low on the grit because I'm going to be finishing this wood with wax. Now for assembly, I added glue, a line of glue there, spread it around, and then with the combination square I could make sure that this piece was central, and then drill down through the pilot holes that I'd made earlier into the vertical piece, and then add the screws. I used a screwdriver just to make sure that I don't go too hard on the screw, as I don't want to split the wood, and that gave me a nice tight fixing. Then for the dowels, I just rolled the ends in some glue and hammered them in. And then I removed any glue with a damp cloth. When the glue was dry, I used a little pull saw to remove the dowels. And then just gave them a hand sanding to make sure they're nice and flush. Now onto the finish. I've got this old brie wax. It's an antique pine colour, and that should match the furniture that I have already in my living room. It was a nice warm day, so this went on nicely. and this old pine looked quite nice with this wax finish. I was quite surprised how nice it looked in the end. It just goes to show some rough wood that you see on the side of the road can be turned into something nice. Then I buffed off all of the excess wax until it had a nice sheen. And finally I added some felt pads to the bottom. The last thing to do was to just add the metal rack back into those holes that I drilled earlier. And that was the rack complete.
Okay, so that is about it then for this video. So nice little project. I think it came out great. I got to use up some old wood that I'd found thrown out, and also the stand itself. So I've got myself a nice little bit of furniture here. If you've still got DVDs, look out for these because people are throwing them out, and you could restore one just like this and make your own little DVD stand. So if you did find this video useful, please remember to like and also consider subscribing for more DIY related videos. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.